My guests today are Stacey Pigott and Shalee Cunneen. These two talented women and mothers have some amazing perspective to share with us about individualized education plans. Stacey Pigott is the mother of Evan, Henry, and Ava. Very apropos to our conversation, she has a BS in education and an MA in liberal studies from Northwestern University. Additionally, Stacey has been a volunteer with CURE, Citizens United for Research in Epilepsy, for the past 10 years. She is now the chair-elect for the CURE board as well. Shalee Cunneen is the mother of Ella and Sean. She has a bachelor's in business from the University of Washington and an MBA from the University of Chicago. She has been a volunteer and fundraiser for CURE for the past 5 years. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, yeah.
So, starting things off, super simple, what is an IEP?
First of all, I will say that an IEP is a legal document from the school. It's an individualized education plan, but keep in mind too that we're moms, we're not lawyers, we're not school administrators, we're not advocates, and so this is very much kind of a mom perspective of the IEP or view of it. But an IEP is the plan for educating your child. It has goals and accommodations for every child's learning that is individual to each student and their individual diagnosis or diagnoses.
Brilliant. So I would love to hear about both of your children for whom you have had to create IEPs.
Okay, well, so my daughter is Ella, and Ella is 9 years old, and she has severe epilepsy, which is why I'm here today.
And she's absolutely adorable.
She's a sweetheart. We're very lucky in that respect, but she has a lot of, learning delays. Pretty much across the board. She functions at like a 3 to 4 year old level, and it's, very hard, but the school and the IEP is great. Things that are in that are goals for academics, as well as, speech therapy minutes. She gets 2 hours of speech therapy every week within the school setting, which is wonderful. We also do some on the outside, but she gets that. She gets occupational therapy. She gets physical therapy. She gets social work. There's all kinds of things that go into the IEP, which is great because then a lot of these services and things that she needs help her get through her day. She also has a one-on-one nurse with her all the time because she could have a seizure at school, and she has a whole team, and everyone on the team knows what to do in the event she were to have a seizure at school. But there's also things just going up and down the stairs by herself, going outside by herself. She functions like a 3 to 4 year old. She'll take off running, and so there's always someone there with her, which makes us as parents feel good that we know that she's safe when she's in the school setting. Other than that, like I said, it's all about, the academics and the goals and all of her therapies that she gets at school. It's pretty great.
My son, Evan, is 17. He's had an IEP since he was in kindergarten. He too, through elementary, had a 1-to-1 aid, and there was a safety component for him, obviously, with that. But it really just makes sure that he can access the curriculum equally to all the other students in the classroom and nurture his learning to where he is and what is going on with him. And I think the interesting thing for epilepsy moms is it's not just looking at the safety and security. It's not just looking at the learning impacts of epilepsy, but this added piece is the impacts of medication as well, because that too can impact a student's ability to access the curriculum.
So I think one of the hardest pieces in this is to just know what accommodations you can ask for, what the options even are. What are some of the accommodations that you've asked for your children, or that have been asked for other kiddos with epilepsy that have been really beneficial?
One thing that I will note is that a lot of the kids are, depending on how frequently they're seizing and what kind of seizures they have and what medication they're on, a child could look very different to the teacher any given day in the classroom, or even from morning to afternoon. So you kind of have to think through the accommodations to fit all kinds of scenarios. So it's a pretty fluid list. We've always had things to deal with cognitive processing speed, to make sure that there's no timed work, that there's extended time on tests. Additionally, it would always take my son so much longer to do every single assignment. He was struggling just to make it through the school day. Is so hard. And then to have to come home and do a homework assignment that maybe should last his homework should maybe be an hour, but it could take him 4 hours. That just didn't seem fair. So one of the accommodations we did is we have a School of Education, the Board of Ed has a policy that says for every grade that your child is in, they get a certain number of minutes of homework. So for example, first grade can have no more than 10 minutes. Second grade can have no more than 20 minutes. So for each grade, what I basically said is, he is doing 20 minutes of homework, period. Whatever he can do in that time period is what's going to come back to school. Really easy to do at the elementary years. It gets a little dicier at the junior high years, but we stuck to that. And I would often, if the team was not sending back accommodated homework with him each day, I would mark it up and I would say, you know what, he doesn't need to do these 50 math problems. He can show you he knows it in these 5. And I would circle it, and that's what he would do. So that's an accommodation we would adhere to for cognitive processing speed. Preferred seating, frequent breaks, getting drinks of water, things like that are really helpful, kind of resetting kids because they are struggling throughout the day. A lot of our kids have executive function issues.
What does that mean, executive function?
So they have a lot of trouble planning, sequencing, problem solving, frontal lobe issues that are really making it difficult, for example, to know what their homework is each day. Organize a notebook, take classroom notes and have it organized in one place. So they need a lot of help staying organized. You have no chance of doing your homework if you don't know what your homework is. So a lot of schools have got Schoology and Canvas and online apps that parents can link into. Those are a lifesaver. Those are really helpful. So trying to go and to make sure that those are accommodations that are being followed is really critical. Some kind of organizational system or executive function system is really important as well to kind of teach them the skills to try to get organized.
We've had some interesting accommodations. For example, when Ella, was potty training, she needs to be near a bathroom. That's an accommodation that you can have there. Or if they're in a preschool class or kindergarten class, there needs to be a bathroom nearby. Also, with kids with epilepsy, they can get really tired throughout the day. I mean, my daughter was still taking a nap in kindergarten, and so kindergarten was a full day. So we had an accommodation that she would go up to the nurse's office. They had a mat, and she would lay down and rest. And that was one of my big holdups for full-day kindergarten, but I know that she needed, that time, she needed a longer day. And so, that's another example of an accommodation. We provided a monitor so that, because she has to be watched when she sleeps, she has seizures. And so, it's all fluid process. But I think that, that was an important accommodation that I didn't even know that they could do, but then we asked for it and they did it. So, don't be scared to ask for accommodations that you think your child needs.
I think a great example for us was that when he was 5, he was on such high doses of Depakote that his hands were always shaking. And they're teaching you when you're 5 to write. And he couldn't write. His hands were shaking constantly. So his handwriting as a result is horrible. He can't read it. Teachers can't read it. We need to have an accommodation that he has access to keyboarding in any class that he wants. And it's something that even holds through as kids get older, even into things such as ACTs, SATs. Those IEP documents are there that can be used in other ways as well to provide accommodations for students.
Yeah, and another example of an accommodation for my daughter, she needs to take frequent breaks. So an accommodation for her is they take her out in the hall, she gets to play catch or play ball or run around for 5 minutes and then go back in and try to sit at the table and do work. So they have the accommodations at all different levels for the kids, and it's really important for their learning.
That's incredible. So, in my situation, Adelaide just turned 3 and we decided to keep her at home for the time being and to not put her in the school system, even though the school does have to take her, the public school system does have to take her, which is, I think, really important for all parents to know. For us, the risk benefit of having her in school with a compromised immune system at this point with her cognition so low just wasn't worth it to us. But at some point, it might be. So what is, for me, I'm just so overwhelmed. Like, what is that? How do you even get that process started?
The first thing you do once you're done with early intervention at age 3 is you contact your school and they will set up an evaluation. They'll probably send you a bunch of questionnaires to answer first, gather some data on your child, and then they will set up an evaluation, a full evaluation, and meet with you and determine what they think is the next best step for setting up their therapies and services at that age.
Yeah, and they have a full team, psychologist, occupational therapist, physical therapist. They will all do an evaluation on your child. And then there's also an opportunity for a lot of families who have done private therapy and private evaluations to bring those evaluations in as well and to try to make it a joint decision. There's also increasingly a lot of hospitals will have someone on staff who will help you with your child's IEP, at least for kids with epilepsy. So sometimes bringing them along as an advocate within the process is really helpful too.
Yeah, I think getting advocates on your side is very important, especially at first because you're new to the whole process. For us, I didn't know what to expect, and it's a little bit overwhelming because people are giving you advice on your child and saying what they think you need, and you obviously know your child best, and so you have to be willing to speak up and say if you agree with something or don't agree with something, because you're the person who knows your kid best. And if you, and you need to do everything you can for them because you're the one that's gonna fight the hardest. I think everyone has your kid's best interest at heart, but there's limited resources. And so getting whoever you can to these meetings, especially at first, is just gonna help you. And we took in my daughter's speech therapist, and we brought in her OT and said, hey, can you come to this meeting with us just to help out? And a lot of these outside therapists, they've been to a lot of these, and so they can kind of offer help, offer assistance as to what you do need to ask for. So I think that's important.
I feel like both of you have had sort of, sounds like positive experiences in creating these IEPs, but I imagine that there have also been obstacles along the way. What are some of those obstacles that parents should be on the lookout for?
IEPs are expensive for school districts, and it can be very challenging for school districts. They don't hand them out like candy.
Yeah, I agree. I think, for the most part, we've had a pretty good experience, but we have had an experience in a prior district that wasn't so great. And, it's very disheartening, and I'm not, a aggressive person. And luckily my husband, knows what to say and knows what to do. And it's like, no, this is unacceptable. We need to do more for her. She needs more than this. And this is why. I mean, you have your facts. You have people that know her. You can have your doctor write letters. You can have, like I said, have other people that know your child and know their disabilities come with you. And I think that really helps because if you, state the facts, there are things that they have to do. But like you said, I think for the most part, everyone's there to help. Everyone wants to see your child succeed. It's just there are limited resources.
What separates, I think, us with epilepsy is I've always felt that if you have a child, for example, who is on the spectrum, there's a pretty clear protocol and therapy program that a lot of people adhere to. Right. And it's accepted within the parent groups, it's accepted at school. With epilepsy, it's so variable depending upon the child. It's so variable upon how they're cognitively impacted. It's variable upon the medications. And, we kind of beg and borrow from different other disabilities to kind of work through a therapeutic program. But we don't even have a clear set of identified issues that we can all work through. For example, I find for my son, cognitive processing speed to be the most debilitating part of his epilepsy. And the more I talk to other parents, the more I talk to doctors who are treating kids with epilepsy, it seems to be a pretty common theme. And the accommodations and how that looks on an IEP is making sure, for example, our kids never have any kind of timed work whatsoever. Yep, exactly. My son has been in a classroom where a teacher has been snapping. No, they can't handle that. No. That anything that's going to add that time pressure is really going to hurt a child. And a teacher may have been doing it, keeping pace and whatnot, and there can be a very good educational reason for it, but you kind of have to advocate of, no, I'm sorry, this is not going to work for my child. This is going to actually have the opposite effect. So you get a lot of finding a group of other epilepsy parents.
Yes.
It's difficult, but it's really needed.
Yeah, I think, when we moved from the city out to the suburbs, and I think when we first did that, we didn't really know anyone. And so my daughter goes to an outside therapy place, and I was asking there, are there any parents you can put me in touch with who have kids who are in this district so I can ask some questions? And I think that was great.
That's a great idea.
Just talking to other people who've been through the process there, granted they might have a different diagnosis. Like with Stacey, we've had issues with, one of the big things I think for an IEP that I forgot to mention earlier is communication. I think you need to lay out on the line right away that we need, strong communications back and forth, especially with kids with epilepsy, because each day is different. My daughter, for example, had a seizure this morning, and so I had to let her team know that, look, she had a very long seizure last night. She might not be herself today. And they can kind of also start to see, patterns, and that will kind of direct her learning, because she might need a lot more breaks today, or maybe she's going to have an amazing day and not need as many, but they kind of need to know what to be on the lookout for. And I think that was one thing that originally in our first IEP we kind of left out. And now we've gotten to where, okay, this is, communication is huge for these kids. We need to know what's going on day to day. Was there a medication increase? Are we weaning off of a medication? Because all of that affects their day. And I think with some other kids with different diagnoses, they don't have that variability and their day-to-day activity. And so I think that's huge.
So how does it work when, you have this team at one school, and it's, you figured out all of the kinks, you figured out what you need, and now your child is going to middle school or to high school or to college, which is in your very near future. How do you make those transitions? Is it just sort of an accrued knowledge and you go into the next meeting, or?
There are transition teams that from the school where they handle transitions from school to school, even from elementary to high school. And the IEP can read a little differently depending upon the just the level of academics at that school and where your child is at that particular time. The transitions are also very, it's not just the IEP document and following it along, but the kids themselves struggle with the transitions a lot. And so a lot of times you think you've got something set, and you got you have your transition plan, and you get them into the new school, and they regress. That's pretty standard. I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, we've run into that. I think, my daughter's been in a few different schools, and now this year is her first year at the same school, same complete team. IEP a little bit different, obviously make tweaks every year, but she hit the ground running, and that was amazing. And so am I nervous about the next transition? Very much so. But you just take everything that you've learned over the process and try to make it as seamless as possible. And but it's not easy.
So while all of this is going on and you are in there tweaking and fine-tuning, there is an emotional component that is, I'm sure, playing out very strongly, both for you as a parent as well as for your child. Can you explain what that's like, and different things to be on the lookout for in terms of how that plays out emotionally?
I mean, I think it's always an emotional experience. I mean, people are in there talking about your child, and let's face it, they're not exactly talking about all the great things your child does. They're talking about the things that you need help with, or he or she needs help with, and it's hard. I mean, I've left multiple meetings crying just because you're hearing it all, not that you don't disagree with it, but it's just like, oh my gosh. But then I've also left a meeting crying because I was happy because she got, it was a good meeting. Everyone was there to help her. And, it's an emotional experience. Look, I get emotional just thinking about it right now because it is a very emotional experience. But when you feel like the people are vested in your child and that, things are going so well, it's overwhelming in a good way. And but you just have to kind of get ready for that, because I don't think I knew walking in the first time what it was really going to be like. I mean, my daughter had other evaluations for early intervention, but this is a whole team, and now we're starting to talk about her life in school, and it can be hard to see the numbers they give you and where your child compares to typical kids, and in your heart where your child is, but it's just it's not fun to hear that. But at the same time, they're there to help you, and you have to remember this is all to help your child and help them succeed in school and keep them safe. And so I think you just need to be ready for it to be a somewhat emotional experience.
Also, if you have to advocate for your child, it puts you in a position where you have to repeatedly point out where they're falling short, or how they're not succeeding, or what certain problems are. And it's not a pleasant place to be, and yet you have to spend a lot of time there. I think my biggest recommendation to people too is to just always adhere to the 24-hour rule. It's so easy to go, and when a child comes home and they've had a bad day, obviously this doesn't apply to if a kid has had a seizure during the school day or anything, there's an emergent need to talk to a teacher, but a lot of times, or there's a thought that maybe an accommodation hasn't been followed, and you want to just so badly rattle off that email and say, no, this was in the IEP or this is an accommodation. Wait 24 hours. Because we are super protective. We're mama bears who will do anything to try to protect what our kids' experience is. And unfortunately, a lot of schools, there are a lot of classroom teachers who have classes that are really over-enrolled, especially in a lot of different school districts. The teacher load is massive. And within each class, a teacher could have anywhere of 1/3 of that class could have IEPs. We're not talking about just 1 or 2 children. So, there is a time and place to kind of recognize what their experience is and what they're having to go through.
Yeah.
Where can you find help to navigate this? Is there help to navigate it?
The school district has the legal responsibility to provide that support and all the evaluations and all the therapy that a student should require to allow them to access the curriculum in the least restrictive environment. But if a school is not doing that, there are advocates that are out there that usually function in legal offices. So you might have an IEP or a special ed lawyer, and a less expensive way of getting services from that law office is to work with one of their advocates. But that costs money. That still is a cost that a lot of people don't have. Some hospitals are starting to add in some IEP advocates that can help parents tremendously. And then there's some places like Toronto Sick Kids Hospital has a school in their epilepsy center.
Oh my
They're
gosh.
amazing. If a child with epilepsy is really struggling in school, they will the parents can pull them out of the public school. They can enroll them into the epilepsy classroom, and they're there for 1 calendar year, and they will work with that student to get them caught up to grade level. And then when they send them back to their original school, they will help retrain the staff and the accommodations and whatnot to provide. It's an
That's
amazing
amazing.
model.
Yes, we definitely need that
So
here.
how do we get that in the United States?
Exactly.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, ladies, so much for letting us pick your brains and for sharing your experiences. And I think that it will be incredibly helpful to so many other families out there who are either just starting on the IEP journey or are well into the thick of it. I know it helps me. So thank you guys
Thanks,
so much.
Kelly.
Thank you.
I want to thank Stacey and Shalee for their insights into how IEPs work for children with epilepsy. It was so interesting to see how parents participate in the IEP process. If you are watching this episode and know a parent who can benefit from the information we shared today, then please share this episode with them. Also, if you can, then we would be grateful if you can share this episode with your social network on Facebook or Instagram. Thanks so much.